Good to have you back once again on Forbes Sports Money. We have been monitoring a major sale in the works. The UFC has been sold for a reported $4 billion. And Michael, this is a story that you've been tracking for the better part of a year, and all that chatter, back rooms, and however else you get it, teletext. Telegraphs comes to fruition.
My sources were telling me a year ago this was going to happen, but every time I try to check with the possible buyer or so, they're like, no way, But yeah, I mean, it started out with a $2.8 billion bid by a group led by Providence Equity. Then there was a $3 billion or so bid by Blackstone Group. And as you mentioned, finally $4 billion bought by WME/IMG, William Morris Endeavor, run by your friend, I guess, Ari Emanuel.
Yes, of course.
From Entourage.
Yeah, of course.
Ari from Entourage.
Yeah.
That's right. Is that supposed to be what that series is made from?
It absolutely is, yes. I wanted to ask you, though, about that price, because what you're talking about, those bids or those numbers thrown out, kind of happened over the course of a year or so since you've been monitoring that. Does it seem like the $4 billion bid was a bid against itself for WME?
Well, I tell you, it's the most ever paid for a sports property. But I thought the $2 billion paid for the Dodgers was too much. That wasn't. The interesting thing about this is that the big investor here, Silver Lake Partners, private equity firm, which owns 51% of the parent company, WME, they're experts at investing in technology. They've done a great job. Skype was one of their big killing investments. They made a lot of money off of that. And I think that's what they see in this investment. There's a tremendous amount of growth through streaming the UFC.
All right, so basically playing to their strengths, right? An arena that they know, kind of blow it out streaming-wise and everything else.
Why couldn't I say it like that?
I don't know. I just try to listen to you, and then I just cut it down to the cliff notes, man. It's my Ozanian translator. Anyway, you found one intriguing thing about this deal, though, that really stood out. What was it?
Yeah, I've been following these deals for over 20 years now, and this is the first time where I've seen where the acquiring company is not actually acquiring and merging the balance sheet and the income statement. There's no cross-collateralization, for a fancy word, which means they're basically being viewed at for reasons of borrowing money as separate entities. And sometimes that's done for tax purposes. Sometimes it's done because you don't want there to be risk. If one entity has problems, you don't want the other entity to suffer. I think in this case it's being done because there's a fair amount of leverage on both of these companies, WME and UFC. And I think it could interfere with bank covenants. In other words, restrictions on how much WME could have total debt on its books. That's my guess. I don't know that for a fact.
All right. We always talk about rising rights fees. We did it just in the last segment, by the way. In 2011, Fox cut a deal with UFC to air its fights and give it blowout coverage for 7 years. That contract is obviously going to come up here in the next couple of years. ESPN has shown much more interest in terms of its coverage of the UFC. What do you think that means when this next deal comes up?
Well, the current deal averages $100 million a year, right around that. I'm guessing around $200 million. I might end up being low. I know you probably think I'm low, but it's going to be put on, I guess, all platforms. I don't know. What do you think?
We'll do what we always do. We'll file that statement away for a later show, and then we'll replay it and review where you're at. But, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it, that a highly sought-after property that WME would pay $4 billion for, they're going to want to monetize that and get as many eyeballs on it as possible.
The ratings are great, and WME already has shown they know how to leverage the content that they have through IMG. The sports licensing deals. They own Wimbledon. They have actors, actresses, Ben Affleck, Charlize Theron they've got. So I don't know what Ari's great plan is, but he sure has a lot of great content.
Yeah, it's all this big melding pot of entertainment, and he makes a good stew, doesn't he?
He does.
All right. Let's move on to MLBAM. Now, we knew at some point, it's another thing you were tracking, that they were going to spin off the tech side of this, and we know that Disney just bought 30% of it. Big dollar amount, $1.1 billion. First of all, that's great for BAM, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, you got to remember that this is just a piece of BAM, but for Major League Baseball Advanced Media overall, the total investment initially was only $16 million. So they're getting $1.1 billion back right here on just this tiny piece of the tech business part. So huge return.
So why the interest for that dollar amount for Disney?
Well, you and I love to talk sports, but I also have a 9-year-old daughter, and I'm thinking, all those Disney movies, Pixar movies, streamed over that great platform that BAM Tech has. And look, ESPN's been working with BAM Tech for a number of years. They've been putting their content on there, so they know exactly what they're getting. And plus, they also have an option to buy another third over the next 4 years.
Does she have a favorite princess?
We both like Frozen.
Oh, you do? Okay. That's always a good place to start, right? Look for it soon on some Disney property. All right.